Hey everyone, it's me HawkeyeG, and I'm here with another video for you. This time I'm doing a video about the various Chaos realms that we'll have to enter in order to win the campaign, as well as all the other mechanics regarding the rifts. No matter if you are a new player to the series or a veteran, this is a totally new mechanic, and I see lots of people on the forums who are figuring them out fresh and new every day. I thought it would be helpful to get a video out here to get into the details and cover all the lesser known tidbits. So, of course, if you are enjoying the videos, please like and subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and it helps me know what you like to see. Now, for this video, I'm going to first discuss what the rifts are and how they work in the campaign, then go into detail about how each specific Daemon's realm works and how best to make your way through it. One thing that I really want to address here first, before we get into things though, I think there's one serious oversight that people are making about a specific aspect of the rifts. People keep saying that there's no reward for doing the realms, and if we're talking specifically about completing the rift, getting the soul, and completing the survival battle, sure, there's no extra reward from that. However, this particular title is weighted pretty heavily towards getting your income from battles, especially if you're playing on hard difficulty or above, and you can get much more experience from battles in this game as well. This means that the Chaos Realms are an easy source of rapidly repeatable battles and thus a steady flow of income. If anything, Slaneesh's realm is actually the worst one in this regard, because you don't have a reliable means of taking fights. You do of course have the ability to leave with a good payout, right? But you can't extend that value indefinitely like you can in some other realms. It should be obvious how this works if you've ever been in Khorne's realm, but we'll actually see how it can operate for Nurgle and Tzeentch's realms as well. It's also what I believe to be the reason for the severe negative traits that you get from the realms. If I can literally stay in a realm and just have endless battles, there needs to be something to incentivize me to leave or to punish me for staying too long. Now, with that being said, let's have a little bit of an explanation of what the rifts do. So the first thing to discuss is what the rifts are and how they work. That these are the primary game mechanic to interact with in order to win the Realms of Chaos campaign in Total War Warhammer 3. But what does that mean? We use these rifts that appear on the map to enter into special restricted areas of the map. You obviously can't see it because I'm not in there, but we can see there's these realms here in the top of our mini map, and that is where we will go if we enter into a rift. These rifts appear approximately every 30 turns. You can see we're on turn 32, and these rifts would have appeared on turn 31. You get a warning about 5 turns before they open, but it seems that it can range from 5 to 10 turns before they actually appear, right? So approximately every 30 turns, give or take 5 turns past each 30th, okay? The rifts will also belong to a particular demon faction. So here you can see this is a rift for Khorne, and they will cause corruption in that area based on their faction. We can see 6 from the rift here. They also will spawn a hero for after about 3 turns, and then they'll spawn an army after about 5 or 6 total turns. So you can almost think of these as enemy bases, right? There's an army building up inside this, and once it's full, it comes out to play. So these can spawn 2 or 3 armies over the course of their lifetime. Now, we also need to make use of these rifts for ourselves, but as I said, they can kind of represent a serious threat to our campaign. Seeing as I'm at a rift, if I go to interact with it, we have various actions to perform with these rifts in order to get different outcomes that we might desire. The first is the ability to close the rift. This can be done with either a hero or a lord. If I do it with my lord, I'm going to end up having to fight the army that's inside it. It actually doesn't seem like this army builds up over time from what I've seen. When you go to fight a rift, it depends on which cycle of the rifts we're at. So since this is the first time the rifts have appeared in this particular campaign, it's a pretty easy army. But that does not represent the strength of the army that come out of it. Now, the other option that we'll have is actually to close the rift with a hero. And this will cost us 1,500 gold, but we don't have to fight an army, right? So you can see fighting it with your lord happens for free, closing it with a hero costs you money, and once you're past like the first rift cycle, it can actually be pretty nice to close some rifts with a lord, as that gives you, relatively free money and experience. You can then use that money to close other rifts with your heroes, right? So if you can close one rift with a lord and then close 2 others with the hero with the money that you made from closing that first rift with your lord and fighting the battle. Now, if we go to access this rift with a lord, we'll see that another option we have is traverse rifts for 1,000 gold. This allows me to teleport to literally any other open rift on the map for the price of 1,000 gold, right? I can go really wherever I want. It'll give me some information on who owns it. If I can find out, it'll tell me what province it is. But for the most part, we're jumping in blind to these, right? It has a variety of uses, of course. It's really interesting. I don't want to get too sidetracked talking about the strategy of why you would do this, how it works, and where you would go, but just know that I can use this as an option to warp across the map instantly and immediately, and it only costs 1,000 gold, right? Just be aware that you have it as an option, and it's one of the functions of the rifts. It's also important to note that these rifts will scale up over time. So this is the first cycle of rifts on turn 30. We'll see that the army that we fight in here is going to be pretty weak. But around turn 60 to 65, when the rifts open again, the armies that come out of the rifts will be stronger. The armies that are inside this rift when you go to close it are stronger. And the enemy armies that you'll encounter while you're in one of the realms of chaos will also be stronger. Now, these scale up until we hit the 4th rift cycle. After the 4th time that the rifts have appeared, that will be their maximum strength, and they won't really develop any further beyond that. Now, the teleport feature is not the main thing I'm here to talk to you about, though. The main thing we want to talk about in this guide is using a portal to transport your legendary lord and their army to one of the actual 4 realms of the Chaos Gods. Each of these is unique in function and setting, but the objective is relatively the same. You need to complete some sort of task to unlock a battle at the center, and that battle will be the new survival battle type that they've introduced here. Upon winning this fight, you'll get the Demon Prince soul from that realm. You need 1 from each realm in order to win the game, and we can see the list of them up here, who has them and what realms those people are currently in. While you're in the realm, you'll actually acquire a negative trait for your lord as you spend more time there. That gets worse the more time you spend, right? It can rank up. A lot of people complain about this, but I actually think it makes sense. Like I mentioned, there's some realms where it's quite easy to rapidly gather experience and money from battles with minimal to no risk to your actual army. In theory, you could stay in these places well beyond the length of time required to beat them, and thus benefit very easily and very greatly, but we'll see that in action as in each of these realms as it becomes relevant to that realm. Now, before we dive into actually talking about the realms, exploring each of them individually, I want to make one last reference to something else here, and that is a guide that somebody posted on Reddit that basically data mined, went into and unpacked the scripting and information that tells you exactly how the realms work and what the AI can and can't do in them. So if we take a look here, Steel Badger Mark II made this post. I'll of course include a link to this post in the description below. But they lay out how all of these realms work, like Khorne's, Tzeentch's realm, Slaneesh's realm, and Nurgle's realm. So there are going to be times where I reference that guide. Please just understand that that's what I'm talking about, and also understand that I didn't make it. Credit where credit is due. It's been a great piece of reference. But basically, like the first one we're going to talk about here is Slaneesh. And when I talk about Slaneesh, I'm going to reference the possible rewards. If you want more information on those rewards or anything else that I briefly reference, please consult that guide. Thank you. So without further ado, let's talk about the actual Demon Realms we need to traverse in order to get the Demon Souls. I'm going to start with Slaneesh's realm. I think it's one of the simplest, it's one of the most talked about, and it's one of the best to be aware of. The key reason being that it's very easy to make quick use of it to get very good rewards instead of actual story progression, and this can be a great boon for any player early in their campaign. In the realm of Slaneesh, your goal is pretty simple. You want to move through the closest portal on each floor in order to proceed to the next floor. This is the only way to move forward, is through these, little event tiles by the rifts. At the very bottom center is the survival battle that you need in order to get the soul. The fastest way to get through this rift, of course, is just not to get sidetracked trying to chase down an enemy army or lord. If possible, you want to avoid those things, right? You don't want to fight enemy armies on your way through if you can. You don't want to fight lords. Maybe if the enemy army will kind of springboard you to the next portal, but keep in mind, I can use both March and Encamp stance when I'm entering into this little, blue zone, and it will still work. So if you're too far to get to the next portal, you can march to it. Or if you are really close to the next portal, maybe you go into Encamp stance to ensure that you'll have the opportunity to recover some troops, right? Now, the main reason we actually come here is if we're looking to take one of the bribes to leave, or that you're confident you would reach the bottom first. Other than that, it's not a realm I would select if you're looking to level up characters or intercept enemies. Now, to expand on what I mean by bribes a little bit, we'll talk about the actual mechanics of this world. Each time you enter one of these portals past the first portal that you go through, Slaneesh will offer you a bribe of some sort. These bonuses vary from floor to floor, and they also vary each entry and each playthrough, right? So the items I'm getting here are different, the money can vary, the other bonuses can vary. They're relatively consistent from floor to floor, right? This first floor is always going to be a set of equipment, and of course you can check the post that I'm going to share in order to figure out exactly what possibilities you have. But basically, you get a bribe at each portal trying to get you into leaving. So the idea here is you either want to leave when you get the bonus that you're looking for, or just go straight for the finish line. I think that if you're coming here in the early game, you actually probably want to exit on this second floor because of the bonus that it gives you. So let's take a quick look at what that looks like. So as you can see, I got lucky. I got one of the larger amounts of gold that there is. But the real reason we do this is for this bonus, right? Specifically, the growth in all provinces bonus. This is going to help you out a lot in the early game. So if you don't feel like you have the time to completely clear out this rift, which might take you around 10 turns, you can just take 3 turns and leave with this bonus, a big amount of money and a good growth bonus. This is really powerful to take in the early game, and it can really help boost you and kind of put you into a better spot earlier in the campaign. Besides that, there isn't really any other special objective or bonuses, okay? There's 2 armies on every floor of the ring, and they'll just kind of walk their way around trying to intercept you. But like I said, you don't really want to fight them because you don't have a good way of replenishing your troops other than moving into a portal in camp stands. But essentially, you're going to lose time anytime you fight them. All the other realms have a better way of replenishing, and we'll see those when we get to those. The important thing to make sure is if you actually want the soul, you want to be ready to enter into the rifts on turn 1 of them opening. If you are behind an AI player in this like race to the center, they will always move forward, okay? Otherwise, they have a 50% chance of either moving forward or just abandoning, right? You might get caught up if you come in late, if you're using some good march stance movements, or if they get blocked and intercepted by an army, but I wouldn't count on that to happen, right? You want to be careful if you're going for a bonus from a later portal. I meant to mention this earlier, but if you come into here later, there's actually a really powerful follower, like ancillary that you can get. Like there's a different one on the 5th portal and on the 6th portal, right? There's also a very powerful weapon from the last 4. So you might be going deeper here. If you want to do that, you want to make sure there's no AI ahead of you, because if they get to the end, they'll just win. But if you're just entering in to get this second floor bonus, you're really not under a lot of time pressure, right? You want to keep track of when somebody enters a rift. You can see it here, and you can see it before you go in. You can't see the time, but you can see people are in it. But basically, if you're looking to win at this realm, you want to go in first. You got to get here immediately to have any chance, right? If you're just going here for a reward, it is not as important to jump into this rift right away. I think that the Slaneesh realm overall, therefore, is one to prioritize when you're on pace to enter the rifts as soon as they open, right? If you know that you're not going to be the first person into the rifts because you're, 3 to 5 turns behind on prepping whatever it is you want to prep back in your home territory, then I wouldn't try to rush it, right? I wouldn't plan on going into the Slaneesh realm. I'd plan on something like Nurgle or Khorne, more likely. Most of these campaigns have an ebb and flow to them, so depending on who you're playing and how you're doing, you might not be ready for a set of rifts when they open. And you really have little to no ability to intercept enemies and stop them from beating you in the race. So if you're looking to actually get the soul, you need to get here first. You want to prepare for that. That being said, it's a great option for entering into early in the game to get that bonus that we talked about. Now, the second rift that we're going to take a look at is Khorne's realm. It's very straightforward, and it can be beneficial to your campaign at pretty much any stage. When you spawn in, you seem to spawn at a random location, so playing as the same faction and entering the portal on the same turn can still kind of put you in a different spot depending on other factors, right? Your goal here is to fight enough enemies to reach a certain total damage threshold. This is calculated based on the HP of the units. Once you reach the threshold, you then unlock the final fight in order to do the survival battle to get the soul. Obviously, the fastest way through is just fight, right? Playing out the battles to take minimal damage and staying closer to the center of the realm will help. So why would I go here? There's a few reasons to go here. For one, it's very easy to intercept enemy lords, right? Everybody's kind of on the same battlefield, is going to have to fight the same enemies, and you can pretty reliably predict where the AI is going to go to get into their next fight and cut them off relatively early or easily. Worst case scenario, you just cut them off at the center regardless of the progress that you've made. You know that the event is going to spawn here, and you can cut them off at that point, right? The other reason it's good to go here, all you really have to do is battle, right? You don't have to worry about any like additional specific mechanics. You can make your pick. You like have your choice of, you know, depending on who I'm playing as or how well I know my faction, what kind of battles I like, what sort of enemies do I actually want to go up against, right? So you'll have that option. You also have these event tiles, which give you full replenishment for your army automatically, but also give you a unique weapon for going to this tile. And you get to keep that unique weapon until the next time you go into a rift, or if you leave this one and go into a different rift at this same time. So how does this realm actually work, right? There's simply armies everywhere. It's rare. They won't really move. If you park right next to them, they will attack you, right? But the biggest obstacle they may present is if they're a unit composition you won't do well against. So make sure to check them out and see what kind of units are in there before you go into battle with them if you think that it's something you might struggle with. Again, you also have the highest likelihood of encountering other factions' legendary lords here. You have the best chance of intercepting them directly, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, obviously I think it's great, right? Getting traits, good experience, free kills on their faction for the setback. The problem is, again, if you don't have a good enough army or you don't have confidence playing out battles, right? I personally find that the Order factions do struggle a little bit. Like they just don't have as easy access to decent units in the early game, right? The Chaos Warriors of Khorne, I could be recruiting literally from like just my home base, right, at tier 1, and this classifies as a tier 2 unit. So I think it's a little bit easier for the Chaos factions to do well in here compared to the Order factions. I don't know if I'd really say the Ogres are easier or harder, maybe right in the middle. But so yeah, the concern here is if you go into Khorne's realm in the early game, the AI might have better troops than you just because they'll be able to leverage their advantages that they get for being the AI better in the early stages of the campaign than they usually do in the late stages. We then have these event tiles, like I mentioned. If I can move my army here, even after a fight, even if I move here in March stance, I will get full replenishment and that unique item like I mentioned. Now, one actual trick that I've learned with this is if I were to go and unequip this unique item, or at least I unequip it before stepping into another tile, I'll actually get to keep multiple unique weapons. So that's something to keep in mind. You'll also notice that this event tile has disappeared now that I stepped on it. That's true for anyone, right? Because supposedly you can only have one of each unique item in the game. That's why when the rifts reopen, you would lose the unique item as soon as you step into one. That's not Khorne's. But basically, like if Greasus here decides to go to this rift, or this tile, get the replenishment, they will take this item and that will disappear. So you can't get unlimited full replenishment because these tiles will not reappear during the course of this rift spawn. But just something to be aware of. It's still a very powerful tool. If you can take a fight, or maybe even 2 if you're playing out the battles, and then still run to this event tile, you can get fully replenished and jump right back into the battles. It's going to be a good way to get you through the realm pretty quickly also. Now I also want to point out that Khorne's realm is fairly easy to farm money and experience from, especially if you're confident in battles. You can see the enemies are not placed too far apart. They're a little bit more spread out in many of the other realms, or at least they're clustered together, but in smaller numbers, like two armies grouped together in Nurgle and Tzeentch. It might be a stretch to get to the replenishment tile on the same turn after 2 fights, but otherwise fighting one army and sprinting there is easy enough. The armies appear to respawn after about 3 turns, so you could fight. I mean, right here you can even see, I know this isn't, I don't know why this is a random Khorne army, but I could fight this army, this army, this army, and by the time I finish fighting this one and end my turn, this first army is going to be back again, right? It's a small map, so it's easy to get across. Like I said, if anybody uses an event tile, it will disappear. So it's better probably to focus down Lord armies early on so that you can kind of chain together all the tiles for replenishment to be able to keep fighting more often. But yeah, you can, if you have good enough replenishment, you can just kind of bounce back and forth between 2 armies pretty much indefinitely. Fight this one, replenish for a turn, and so on and so forth. There's no there's no real restriction on how long you want to do that, unless somebody actually finishes this realm, which shouldn't happen if you position yourself properly, right? So I think that Khorne's realm is a good option at any stage of the campaign. If you go here early, it ensures really good battle income and experience for you, and has a high likelihood of direct confrontation with enemy lords, so you can get their traits earlier. But it's for that same reason that you might save this realm for later on. You can have a bit more certainty in intercepting an enemy who is ahead of you in the race, as opposed to, say, Tzeentch or Slaneesh's realm, where you really need to make sure that, like, you shouldn't be going to those realms to intercept a lord. You should be going there because you are confident that you will complete it first. Khorne's realm, you don't have to come here because you're confident in completing it first. You're just confident that you'll be able to beat anybody else who's there before you. Now, just as an example of how you really can farm out this realm pretty easily, when I came through here on my campaign for this particular playthrough, I entered with Scarbrand at around level 20. You can see I auto-resolved this fight and moved to this point here, right? The first fight was only 1,500 gold and 6,000 experience, but we can get some more traits on Scarbrand, continue to get our research, and most of the rest of the fights were 3,000 to 4,000 gold, 6,000 experience, pretty much 2 levels per every fight. The final battle being 10,000 gold and 8,000 experience. So in total, after taking 5 separate battles, hitting 2 of these tiles for the unique item, and then doing the survival battle, I walked out of here with 27,000 gold and almost 40,000 experience. 11 levels, 2 unique weapons, 1 bonus trait. Could easily get more if I wanted to stay longer than that, but just to show you, you can still make a lot of money off of this even in the early game, even if we compare it to something like the Slaneesh realm. Now that we're done with Khorne's realm, let's talk about Nurgle's realm. It can actually be the easiest realm to farm rewards from. It's very easy to manage and make use of its mechanics for your benefit, and it's also incredibly easy to intercept enemy lords here even if you come in late. In Nurgle's realm, your objective is always going to be to reach one of the special event tiles on the other side of the map from where you spawn in order to unlock the survival battle at the end, and then you have to go back and complete the battle. The fastest way to do this, of course, is pretty much to just try to sprint to the other side of the map. The objective tile is always across the map from where you spawn in. It's not necessarily the opposite corner, but it's always the other side. There's also other mechanics we can take advantage of here that I'd like to talk about anyhow, so let's get into it. The first thing is something that most people are familiar with by now. You suffer attrition in this realm. It's pretty bad. Now, of course, you can easily get corruption reduction effects on your lords and sometimes traits on your heroes. You'll also have research for it. Some factions have unique landmark buildings that will provide them attrition reduction. So it can be useful to hold off on coming here until a little later into the campaign to not suffer those effects. But of course, there's other alternatives in this realm specifically. The event tiles here give you full replenishment, much like they do in Khorne and Tzeentch's realm. However, they also are going to give you a unique trait, which is going to reduce, it's only going to last while you're in here, but it reduces your attrition by 25%. So you can see that applies to my army. Each one of these event tiles in this area is going to have that trait. So you could theoretically get to 100% attrition reduction in this area. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's definitely worthwhile to kind of double back at the start. In fact, it's probably better to first fight the enemy army and then double back to get this replenishment, because you'll have another turn before the enemy army responds, so that you can just march out at full health after having fought the battle with reduced attrition. Now, like I mentioned as well, it's also very easy to intercept enemy lords in this realm. I definitely think it's the easiest, perhaps on par with Khorne's realm. Even if you get in late, all you have to do is make it to the center before the enemy gets all the way across the map to their unique tile and then back into the center, right? So it's going to take them about 3 times longer to navigate this than it does for you to intercept them successfully. You just have to push through the first army blocking you and then move towards the center. You can kind of rush there in march stance for a turn and then in camp and move the rest of the way in order to make sure that you're replenishing before they arrive there. Now, to come back to a different thing here, something you may have noticed is this unique event tile did not respawn, or did not despawn, right? In the Khorne realm, as soon as we picked it up, it went away, and the same will be true of Tzeentch's realm. But in Nurgle's realm, it doesn't despawn. Now, the reason that this is important is because we'll still get that full replenishment from taking this tile. And so you can see, now this might only be true with Scarbrand in some situations, but I can take that fight, march back to this point, and get full replenishment, okay? I don't get an additional trait, right? This is the same trait, so you can't stack corruption reduction or attrition reduction this way. But, you know, if we look at some of these other sites, this one in the northwest, these enemy armies are pretty close to the replenishment site. Now again, probably partly because I'm playing as Scarbrand. You know, you can see I'm only going to have 1% movement left, but I have his campaign skill to increase movement after a battle. I can auto-resolve this because I don't even need to care about it, but I'm getting about 6,000 gold and 5,000 experience for each one of these fights. I won't be able to make it back to this point on this turn, but I can still just march back here. Now we've killed both of these armies, right? And this is the second turn here. Well, let's go one more turn and see what happens. As you can see, it's been 2 turns. This army has returned. Again, we still can get full replenishment from this tile. Now, I won't be able to make it to that army, but again, I'm just auto-resolving these battles. I'm auto-resolving these battles. I'm definitely taking more damage than I need to in these fights, and I could be clearing them much more easily. And in addition, even though these are kind of spread out points of access, we could probably get both of these fights done in a turn, run down to here, fight both of these armies, and then maybe run to this replenishment point. My point is, this is by far the easiest realm to exploit if you're looking for money and gold income. I could stay here pretty much indefinitely, right? And especially if I move to this top right corner, where I don't have to move as far between the replenishment point and the armies, I can just go back and forth over and over again. Again, if you're really confident, you fight both armies, take minimal damage, march down, fight another army, and then just go get full replenishment. And by the time you run back out, these 2 armies will be back again. You could stay here indefinitely. You can easily intercept enemy armies. Of course, you're going to potentially suffer attrition. You're going to get the debuff from the Chaos Realm trait. But to me, this is the reason that this exists. This is a highly exploitable realm. I personally feel like I haven't really seen anybody talk about this as an option. But again, some of it is from post-battle loot, like research and campaign effects for playing a Scarbrand, but I made 6,000 gold and 5,000 experience from that fight. I can easily do 2 of these fights every single turn, and especially if I'm doing really well in battles, maybe I'm cheesing battles, or just using like a ranged heavy, coming in here with something like Kislev or Tzeentch, going up against Nurgle armies, where I'm going to be ranged heavy. If I can get some successful fights like that, I can take minimal damage, and again, each of these tiles gives you an additional 25% attrition reduction, so it's really not that big of a deal. Like, if I'm gonna do that, especially if I started in this corner, I probably should touch both of these tiles for 75% attrition reduction. Anyway, hopefully that makes sense. It's definitely something that I'd kind of consider an exploit, or at least, like, this right here is the reason that you get a really bad negative trait for spending too much time in the Chaos Realms, but just something that I wanted to talk about. It's very easy to do this in Nurgle's realm, so please be aware of that. People keep talking about there's no reward for going in here for completing the realm. That's because the reward is being in the realm itself and getting all of these fights and money and experience for free. Now, that actually covers everything for Nurgle's realm. It's not really the most important one to go to first as the player. Like I said, you might want to wait until a little later on when either you have more downtime if you're planning on using that exploit, or just because this is something that you can save for later because of how easy it is to intercept enemy lords. So you save this one for later, and if somebody's ahead of you in the race, you can easily cut them off and regain your ground by going to this realm at the same time as them and anybody else, right? So yeah, my recommendation is to leave it till later in the campaign, unless you want to come in here early game and do a little bit of that, like, battling of the exploit of infinite battles. Yeah, that's Nurgle's realm. Having seen the other 3 realms, that of course leaves us with one remaining, the realm of Tzeentch. Pretty much everybody's least favorite, so I saved the best for last. It is a bit confusing to navigate. It's pretty difficult to intercept enemy lords. It's fairly easy to farm battles here, but they are not very high value armies typically. Overall, it's difficult to actually get through this to the end and beat the AI consistently, and there's not much to talk about for trade-offs. Hooray! But there's actually some upsides to this place once you get to know it, so we will talk about those here. by the way, you can totally pretend that I was hovering over the realm of the sorcerer the whole time and didn't get distracted by the Tzeentch being in the different realm. So, our primary goal here is to navigate through these portals that appear on each of these 5 little islands, right? We jump through these portals from one island to the next until we come across the portal that actually takes us into this portal right here, where the Impossible Fortress is located, which is the survival battle we need in order to get the soul. Once we actually make it to the Impossible Fortress, we can just do the fight. This isn't like Nurgle or Khorne's realm where there's some kind of special requirement to unlock the final battle. The problem is, we don't know which one of these portals is going to take us there, or which path to take at the start of our journey, right? We already have 2 options here that we can take. Now, the fastest way to get through this realm is just to cheat and look it up. Like I showed you before from that guide, that person did an excellent job of including details about Tzeentch's realm, and I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. You should look at this and find out for yourself kind of how it works if you're curious, but basically your faction will spawn in one of these specific locations. Based on which spot you've spawned in, there's 2 possible portal layouts for you that you can use to jump through things, right? So you might have a portal layout like this, or a portal layout like this if we're playing a Scarbrand. Again, I know this is pretty spoilery, and I know that this won't make sense just looking at it, but so we can see that if, like, one chain will eventually take us through to the end. The other chain, if we take it, might just actually loop us back around. But so we can kind of see that depending whether we take, like, even this top portal will take us to 2 different potential paths because of where we started. So yeah, the fastest way to get through this realm is just look it up. Pull up that guide, pull up the map of your, like, character, your faction. If you don't feel confident getting through this or navigating it yourself, that really is the fastest way. You're still going to have to either get, like, a sigil pairing done, which we'll talk about later, or you just blindly jump into a portal, check the map, and see which one this connected you to determine which map layout you have, and then kind of move forward from there, okay? If you don't want to look it up, there are 2 other really solid methods. First is just brute force, basically. Just try to march and push through. If you do things right, there's most of these islands, I mean pretty much every island except this top one, you can get into the next portal in a single turn. So you just march through. Like, if you land on an event tile, it stops your movement, so you want to avoid these. But if you don't land on this, you can just keep moving through the portals, about 1 per turn. You really only have 2 choices here. Your first choice is kind of a 50-50 chance. Do you take the shorter route or the longer route here? And then, of course, the island with 3 portals, you know, this is where the real difference is made, right? You get to this island, and one of these portals is going to take you, like, the reverse loop from the alternate path that you had. And then one of these portals is either going to take you straight to the Impossible Fortress, or it's going to take you to a series, like an island and portal chain that you haven't been on, that will actually then take you to the final portal. Now, the third choice, and definitely the most consistent if you want to be certain about your decision making, is to fight armies and use these event tiles in order to uncover the sigils. You can see we have an example of a sigil here. There you get these little symbols that will appear above the portals in order to show you which locations, like which portals connect to which. Now, of course, that all assumes that you know already how the portals work and how the sigils work. If you don't, I'm going to cover that here next, right? So, like I said, we have the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we have 6 separate islands here, each with 2 portals, except for the topmost one, which has 3 portals. Each portal connects with a portal on a different island, right? So this portal might take us here, or it might take us here or here. And one of these will ultimately take you to the Impossible Fortress. The trick is that island with the 3 portals on it, like I mentioned. This is kind of where your route is going to diverge, and this is kind of the one that you need to know which one goes which way. Now, in order to get kind of a better demonstration, we're going to I'll show you how all this stuff works, right? So I go and fight an army. This army's an absolute joke here, so we're going to auto-resolve this. We're going to then reveal Teleport Sigil as an option in post-battle. And this will reveal one of the sigils to us in this campaign, okay? We then have enough movement range, because I'm playing a Scarbrand, kind of cheeky, to be able to get to this other fight for an easy auto-resolve. We are going to, again, reveal Teleport Sigil, and we're going to kind of get another random one, right? So this one actually is super valuable to us, and this is really lucky for this demonstration and totally unplanned. I now know which portal is going to take me to the Impossible Fortress. Frankly, this is all the information that I think you need, right? And so if you're not looking to cheat with the map, this is the kind of information that you're looking to get, right? Because now I know that when I get to this island of 3 options, or well, 2 options essentially, the next choice I have to make, I can take this portal. And in a way, it doesn't really matter which of these ways I go, because that means that all these other portals are just gonna like loop me around through the course, right? This portal might lead here, and then to here, and then to here, where this portal would lead me to here, and then to here, and then to here, right? If that makes sense. So in this case, we got really lucky. We found out right away. Perhaps you wouldn't get so lucky, so you'd take both those fights to get the sigils unlocked, and then you come here to this little tile where we can reveal sigils for teleport pairing, and this one should actually give you both sigils for one specific pairing of teleports, right? Where the armies just kind of give you one at random. If you go to an event tile and you select it, it will actually give you a specific pairing, right? I know that this portal and this portal are going to be connected. So that's how that works. As we can see, however, it did sap my movement range. So it can be kind of a trap to go into the event tiles. They sap your movement range, they disappear after 1 turn. Now, they have some other bonuses, which I'd like to show, so let's move forward a little bit. It's also important to point out that when you actually travel through one of these teleports, it saps all of your movement range as well. So that's why it's kind of important to avoid the event tiles if you can. It's just that the event tiles are useful for establishing a certain one-to-one transport. So I actually had to backtrack here a little bit. I'm not sure if it's just the first location that does it, or if it's specific ones. I have to admit I don't know, but you see we have this 4th option, right? So when we go to one of these tiles, we can fully replenish an army, reveal a sigil for teleport pairing. We can actually get this cool little global recruitment bonus minus 9 turns, so we can guarantee like instant recruitment, right? By using one of these tiles if we lose some units. We can also take this random boon, right? Which these can kind of be pretty random. Again, I'm not going to try to, talk about all the options here, but it's probably worth at least hitting this first event tile and taking the boon. Of course, that's kind of a setback on your sigil knowledge, but as we saw in the first demonstration, it's possible to get really lucky off of the first army you fight and find the sigil that leads you to the final portal. That's basically what you are looking for in terms of information, is if you can figure out which portal leads you to the final realm, and then determine which portal from this island of 3 is going to be the correct one to take. At most, you would have to clear out 3 islands, so fight both armies and take the sigil, like the sigil pairing from the event tile on 3 islands in a row, and that would give you enough information. But as we've seen, it can kind of come to you a little bit earlier than that. That's like the absolute most you should have to do to be able to make the correct conclusion with the information that you have remaining as to what possibilities would take you into this end port. Now, on the topic of intercepting enemy armies, frankly, if you need to intercept an army, it's best for you to just wait in place, right? Maybe spend that time farming some kills. These armies are also on a 2-turn cooldown, and since they're so incredibly weak, they're very easy to fight. It's not great for experience, but anyway, you wait because the AI is going to they have a preset path technically, but they're going to have a different path through the portals from you. You can't predict based on which portal they've entered where they're going to come out unless you cheat and use the guide. So if you sit in place and wait, they will eventually come to you. They only have to go through 5 portals, but that means that they should go through 5 separate islands, right? The 5th portal would be on their 5th island, and instead of taking them to the 6th island, it takes them to the end. So you have a very high likelihood, right? 5 out of 6 chance that you're going to intercept them if you just stay put. But besides that, there isn't much else special here, right? The armies appear after 2 turns. We can sit in a camp stance and farm battles easily, and you could see in the late game, this could be a good option for farming some battles, especially if you need to intercept somebody, like you need to in order to help keep your campaign on track. Well, that's fine. You just keep fighting these 2 armies, and if you need to do some global recruitment after a tough fight, you just take the global recruitment reduction option from the tile, right? So we saw that can be really powerful. These of course can give you replenishment. You probably won't need it, but yeah, just sitting in place and waiting for somebody to come to you shouldn't be too difficult. So at the end of the day, there are some tips and tricks that we can use. There's some knowledge about how this realm works specifically and how we can get more information from fighting armies and using these event tiles that are going to help give us a bit more of an advantage. But this is another realm where if you need the soul, it's not about whether you come here early or late in the campaign. It's much more about coming here knowing that you will have, like, knowing that you're first, right? Getting here first and coming to this realm when you're, like, prepared to enter it. When you have a couple of spare turns before the rifts open where you don't have anything to do, so you can enter into here on turn 1. It actually might be the best rift to get out of the way first if you want an actual soul and you're not doing something like taking a bribe from Slaneesh, or you're doing the, like, experience farming from Nurgle or Khorne. This is because, like, look at how pathetic these armies are. This campaign happens to be on normal, so I don't know if they're stronger on higher difficulties, but I don't think they are, because Khorne's armies and Nurgle's armies were still pretty serious. So in overall, it seems the Tzeentch armies are weaker, less viable. You're probably not, if you're going to want to kind of exploit the respawning armies, you shouldn't be doing it here in Tzeentch's realm to make use of, like, farming money and experience. But yeah, if you come here in the early game, pretty much guaranteed that you will have no threat other than other legendary lords that are going to stop you from successfully getting to the end and doing the survival battle. Now, with that being said, I've covered everything I wanted to for this guide. I learned a lot of useful tips and tricks along the way, and I encourage others to explore and experiment on their own as well. The rifts mechanics and the realms are a whole new thing to this series, and so it's not quite as natural to just pick up and play without making some preliminary oversights and mistakes the first several times that you enter into these realms. I, of course, am hoping that by putting this guide out there, I'll help make people make more sense of these realms more easily, and be able to do so without having to take risks, make sacrifices, or make a quick save on turn 32 and load it 4, 5, 8 times in a row to do a lot of exploring and experimenting on their own, right? There's even a couple of other tips and exploits I've included here that I know some people are going to like, and that I feel like some people haven't discussed, or some of these things haven't been talked about quite as much. Now, if you think there's anything that I missed, of course, please leave a comment down below. Let me know. Let other people know. Otherwise, feedback is always welcome too. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and stay tuned for more Warhammer 3 videos on my channel. Thanks out there to everyone for watching. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next one.